Hey everyone, welcome to a deep dive into a debate as old as time. New York City versus LA.
It's one for the ages, isn't it?
It really is. And we're going beyond tourist traps today because maybe you're thinking about actually living in one of these cities or even trying to do the whole bi-coastal thing.
Or hey, maybe you're just as obsessed with these places as we are.
Totally. So to help us navigate this, we've got insights from Shiva Bhaskar.
A writer who's actually called both New York and LA home.
Exactly. And what's so cool is he goes past just listing pros and cons, you know?
He gets into how these cities actually feel to live in day after day.
Which honestly made for some surprises for me.
Yeah, some of his takes really shift your perspective.
For sure. Like right away, when it comes to getting around, he is Team New York.
No contest.
No contest.
Which is interesting because even HE admits the subway can be a bit of a nightmare.
Oh yeah, he doesn't sugarcoat the crowds, the delays, all that.
Not at all. But there's this anecdote about when he got his unlimited Metro card for the first time.
Oh yeah.
And it's like this moment of pure freedom for him.
Like the city just unlocks.
The whole city opens up, and it makes you realize how geography plays a huge role.
Big time. New York's density is what makes it so walkable, makes public transit not just doable, but essential.
Right.
LA is just a completely different story with how spread out it is.
Oh, yeah, you almost have to have a car in LA.
Pretty much, and that changes how you experience everything.
It's true. I mean, think about it. Have you ever lived somewhere with truly amazing public transportation?
It changes your whole relationship to where you are.
Completely. You can be spontaneous, you can explore.
It's a whole different way of life.
For sure. All right, so speaking of how you experience a city, let's talk outdoor stuff.
This one, LA's got to take the win, no surprise.
No surprise. Sunshine, mountains, beaches. Bhaskar really makes you feel that year-round access to nature.
He paints quite the picture.
He does. But he does give New York credit where it's due for those amazing spring and fall days.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, when everything's in bloom, perfect for a stroll through Central Park.
He even quotes 30 Rock. There's nothing quite like New York in the spring.
I love that. But then, on the flip side, there's winter in New York.
Yeah, Bhaskar doesn't shy away from those brutal winters.
He makes you feel that wind whipping down the avenues.
Bundle up in a million layers just trying to get to the bodega.
It's so real. Anyone who's been there in winter knows that feeling.
Absolutely. And it just highlights how weather can really shape how you feel about a city.
Big time. For some people, it's a deal breaker.
For others, it's just part of the charm.
Right. So it makes me curious. For you, is weather a big factor in where you live?
That's a good question, I think, for me.
Okay, this is where things get a little unexpected. Nightlife.
You'd think with all the laid-back vibes and patio scene, LA would win this one.
Right.
But actually, Bhaskar gives the edge to New York.
He does. And here's the thing. He talks about living in LA before ride-sharing apps were a thing.
Oh, yeah.
Getting around at night was a whole ordeal, and a lot of places closed early because of it.
So it felt like the city shut down super early.
Exactly. And even though ride-sharing has changed things up, it makes you think about what really makes a city feel alive at night.
It's a good point.
Is it just about bars being open late?
Or is there like a vibe and energy that's harder to pin down?
Okay, now get ready for this one because it might be a shocker.
Yeah.
Quality of housing.
This one surprised me too.
LA takes the crown.
We always hear about those classic New York brownstones and all that.
Right. But Bhaskar actually points out some unexpected advantages in LA.
Yeah, like what are those?
Newer buildings, lack of basements, which makes sense with earthquakes,
Right.
and even how much easier it is to have a garden in LA.
Oh, interesting.
He compares his parents' garden in LA, overflowing with fruits and vegetables, to trying to grow anything in New York.
It's like a totally different world.
It really is, and it makes you wonder, what do you value in a home?
Yeah, good question.
Is it that historic charm, even with the potential maintenance headaches?
Or is it more about modern amenities and that newness?
That California fresh start, you know?
It is appealing. Tough choices.
Really tough choices. And speaking of things that bloom, let's get into food.
This is a category that's almost too close to call.
Almost a tie. But both cities have their strengths and weaknesses, at least according to Bhaskar.
Like picking a favorite child, I guess.
Right. He raves about the variety in New York.
Oh, yeah.
Incredible Thai, Vietnamese, pizza that rivals Italy.
You're making me hungry.
I know, right? But here's the catch. He says finding truly great Mexican food in New York was a struggle.
Ooh, that's a deal breaker for some people.
It is. On the flip side, LA's pizza game might not be quite at New York's level.
But more than makes up for it with just the sheer breadth of cuisines.
Totally. Bhaskar specifically mentions Lebanese, Persian, Japanese. It's like a global food tour.
Sign me up. That sounds amazing.
And it gets to the heart of what makes each city's food scene so special, right? It's not just about good food.
It's about how food reflects all those diverse communities that make up the city.
Exactly. It makes me wonder, what's your non-negotiable food in a city? You know, that one cuisine you have to have access to.
That's a tough one. I'm a big fan of.
Would you sacrifice one category for excellence in another?
That's a good thought experiment.
It is. Okay, last but definitely not least, arts and culture.
Here we go.
And on this one, Bhaskar gives a pretty clear win to New York City.
I was kind of expecting that.
But LA definitely puts up a fight.
Oh, for sure. Bhaskar talks about those iconic LA venues, the Wiltern, the Roxy, places where music history happened.
Yeah, and those incredible museums, the Broad, LACMA.
They've got some amazing collections.
They really do. He also highlights LA's thriving indie art scene.
Oh, cool.
With all those smaller galleries popping up everywhere.
It's going to be cool to discover artists before they blow up.
Absolutely. And events like Downtown Art Walk where the whole neighborhood comes alive with creative energy.
That sounds awesome.
But for Bhaskar, nothing compares to that density of culture in New York City.
It's hard to beat.
It's not just about those world-famous places like the Met or MoMA. It's how art just seems to be woven into every corner of the city.
You just stumble upon it.
He talks about walking through neighborhoods like Bushwick and finding these tiny galleries tucked away in old warehouses.
Like you're seeing the next big thing before anyone else.
And then, of course, there's Broadway.
Ah, Broadway.
Even though Bhaskar admits he wasn't a huge theater person before moving to New York,
Right.
the few shows he did see really made an impression.
There's just something about that energy, the spectacle of it all.
It's unique to New York. And it's more than just entertainment, it's an experience.
That's what he seems to be getting at with this whole comparison, isn't it?
Yeah, New York might not always be the easiest city to live in,
Right.
but it throws these incredible experiences at you constantly.
You never know what you're going to come across.
Exactly. And it's not just highbrow stuff either.
Oh, yeah.
Free concerts in Central Park, impromptu street performances in the subway. There's that constant hum of creative energy.
It's intoxicating, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
So after all this back and forth, where do we land? It seems both cities have amazing experiences to offer.
But they cater to different things, different life stages, maybe.
And Bhaskar hits on that point in his closing thoughts.
How so?
He talks about how New York had this pull on him in his 20s and 30s.
Yeah,
That energy, that feeling of endless possibility.
I can see that.
But he also acknowledges that the daily grind can wear you down after a while.
It's a lot to keep up with.
It is. And that's where LA's laid-back lifestyle starts to look pretty good.
That outdoor living, that slower pace.
Right. But even with LA, Bhaskar throws in a caveat.
What's that?
He says that sprawl can lead to a sense of isolation,
Oh, interesting.
and the cost of living, especially housing, is a huge barrier for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's a big factor.
It is.
Yeah.
And here's what I find so interesting about his perspective.
What's that?
He doesn't present these cities as like a binary choice.
I see.
He's grateful for his time in both places and recognizes how each one shaped him.
Makes you think beyond those specific things he focused on, right?
It does. What other factors should someone think about when deciding between these two cities?
Yeah, good question. Like, we haven't even touched on career opportunities.
Right. Which is huge for a lot of people.
New York's a powerhouse for things like finance and media.
And LA's got the entertainment industry on lock.
So that's definitely got to factor in.
For sure. And then there's the whole social scene thing, too.
Oh, yeah, totally different vibes.
Are you looking for that fast-paced, ambitious New York energy or something more laid-back like those classic LA networking brunches?
The brunches.
Gotta factor that in. And of course, the elephant in the room. Cost of living.
Both cities going to hit your wallet, but New York takes it to a whole nother level.
No kidding. Definitely something to consider. And then family friendliness.
Oh, interesting.
LA's got that more suburban feel in a lot of areas, while New York offers amazing cultural experiences for kids.
It all comes down to priorities, doesn't it?
It really does. And that's what's so cool about Bhaskar's story. It's just one perspective.
What resonates with him might be totally different for someone else.
Right. So if you're out there wrestling with this decision or even just daydreaming about these cities, keep digging.
Don't just skim the surface.
Do your own WN deep dive. Figure out what really matters to you.
What are your non-negotiables when it comes to city life?
Exactly. Are you chasing career goals, artistic inspiration, or that perfect avocado toast?
Or all three?
Maybe. But figuring out your why will help you decide which coast, or maybe even a totally different city altogether, is calling your name.
It's about finding the place that feels right for you, not just what looks good on paper.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And that's a wrap on our deep dive into the NYC versus LA showdown. Thanks for joining us on this journey. Hope you got some fresh insights, a little city life wisdom.
And maybe even some wanderlust.
A little bit of that. Remember, the best way to truly experience a city is to dive in head first.
Get lost in those side streets. Find your favorite hole-in-the-wall spot.
Soak up that unique energy.
Every city has its own rhythm.
So go out there and explore. Find your own urban adventure.
And who knows, maybe you'll have your own NYC versus LA story to tell someday.
Until next time, happy exploring. And then there's the whole social scene thing, too.
Oh, yeah. Totally different vibes.
Are you looking for that fast-paced, ambitious New York energy?
Yeah.
Or something more laid back, like those classic LA networking brunches?
The brunches.
Got to factor that in. And of course, the elephant in the room, cost of living.
Both cities going to hit your wallet, but New York takes it to a whole nother level.
No kidding. Definitely something to consider.
For sure.
And then family friendliness.
Oh, interesting.
LA's got that more suburban feel in a lot of areas, while New York offers amazing cultural experiences for kids.
Right.
It all comes down to priorities, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
And that's what's so cool about Bhaskar's story.
What is it?
It's just one perspective.
Yeah.
What resonates with him might be totally different for someone else.
Absolutely. So if you're out there wrestling with this decision, or even just daydreaming about these cities, I encourage you to keep digging.
Yeah.
Don't just skim the surface.
Mm-hmm.
Do your own deep dive.
Go deep.
Figure out what truly matters to you.
What are your non-negotiables when it comes to city life?
Exactly. Are you chasing career goals, artistic inspiration,
Right.
or that perfect avocado toast?
Or all of the above.
You know, maybe, but figuring out your why will help you decide which coast. Or maybe even a totally different city altogether is calling your name.
It's about finding the place that feels right for you, not just what looks good on paper.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive into the NYC versus LA showdown.
That's a good one.
Thanks for joining us on this journey. Hope you got some fresh insights.
Yeah.
A little city life wisdom.
And maybe even some wanderlust.
A little bit of that. Remember, the best way to truly experience a city is to dive in headfirst.
That's right.
Get lost in those side streets. Find your favorite hole-in-the-wall spot.
Those are the best.
Soak up that unique energy.
Every city has its own rhythm.
So go out there and explore. Find your own urban adventure.
Love that.
And who knows, maybe you'll have your own NYC versus LA story to tell someday.
That's the dream.
Until next time, happy exploring.